各位傳媒界嘅朋友，今日簡報。
Friends of the media, this briefing session, is to report to you the work of the House Committee in the current session. Perhaps I would first invite Mr. Ronnie Tong to say something. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start first. Friends from the media, within this session, we have held 31 regular meetings and 2 special meetings. And we also met with the Chief Secretary for Administration to discuss the consultation document on population policy and related public participation activities. According to the legislative program submitted by the administration to this council, the administration planned to submit 28 bills to this council within the session. Ultimately, 26 were tabled, and then there were 3 not in the legislative program. So altogether, the government has tabled 29 bills to this council. And we have to add another one tabled on the 4th of June 2014 by Dr. Priscilla Leung, and that is the Kowloon Tong Church of the Chinese Christian and Missionary Alliance Incorporation Amendment Bill 2014. Regarding Bills Committee, we've set up 25 Bills Committee to scrutinize 2 government bills. The bills submitted by the administration include Marriage Amendment Bill 2014, Employment Amendment Bill 2014, Copyright Amendment Bill 2014, Private Colon Barrier Bill, and Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Amendment Bill 2014. Although members did ask the administration to submit bills as early as possible, but most of the bills were only tabled nearer the end of the session. Of the 29 bills, 17 were submitted in April or later, and 2 were only tabled on the very last council meeting. The 2 bills are Veterinary Surgeons Registration Bill 2014 and Land Miscellaneous Provisions Amendment Bill 2014. The relevant scrutiny will have to be handled in the next session. And there are also 2 outstanding bills which have not been tabled in this council within the session, and that is Big Product Eco-Responsibility Electrical and Electronic Equipment Amendment Bill and the Inland Revenue Amendment No. 2 bill. As at the 8th of July, within this session, members also scrutinized 113 pieces of subsidiary legislation and 16 proposed resolutions submitted by the government. The House Committee set up 29 subcommittees to scrutinize 36 pieces of subsidiary legislation and 5 proposed resolutions, including the one to incorporate the enclave in Tai Long, Saiwan into the East Sai Kung Country Park, i.e. the Country Park Destination Consolidation Amendment Order 2013, and also to provide for the composition and labeling requirements of baby formula products, and i.e. Food and Drugs Composition Labeling Amendment No. 2 regulation, and also the proposed resolution for the purpose of setting up the new Innovation and Technology Bureau. Also, the House Committee considered the 16 pieces of subsidiary legislation which are not required to be tabled in this council, including 13 pieces of subsidiary legislation made under the UN's sanctions ordinance, and they have been referred to the subcommittee to examine the implementation in Hong Kong of resolutions of the UN Security Council in relation to sanctions. And if you want to refer to the figures that I have just mentioned, please refer to the leaflet distributed by the Secretariat.
I'm sure members will agree. This session of the LegCo is a rather eventful one. Last month, the LegCo complex was subject to violent storming. Such behavior must not be condoned. Same as the last session of the LegCo business has been seriously affected because some members engaged in filibustering this session. They've also abused the right to call for quorum and wasted the time of the Legislative Council. The Council spent 148 hours and a total of 17 days to pass the budget. The Finance Committee and the Public Works Subcommittee also have to deal with a large number of motions tabled at the last minute by a few members. So there is a serious backlog of funding and works proposals. These have yet to be considered. Many of these proposals involve people's livelihood, including the low-income working family allowance and civil service pay adjustment and so on. This would all seriously undermine the interests of society. While there's been there's been many obstacles in the work of the Council, still members managed to set up a subcommittee on policy issues to consider matters of interest and concern to the public. The Subcommittee on Poverty has already completed a study on working poverty within this session. The subcommittee has also laid down the principles for low-income working family allowance. The proposals have been submitted to the Commission on Poverty led by the Chief Secretary for Administration. I would also like to mention that upon the request of members, new resources have been allocated to LegCo so that the number of subcommittees on policy issues that are active at any one time has been increased from 8 to 10. And for subcommittees that have started to work in this session, they include subcommittee on issues, subcommittee on retirement protection, and under the panel on welfare services, subcommittee on issues relating to public markets, and subcommittee on hawker policy under the panel on food safety and environmental hygiene, and so on. Well, actually, the quota has been quickly used up. Now there are 3 subcommittees on the waiting list. That includes the Subcommittee on Strategy and Measures to Tackle Domestic Violence under the panel on welfare services, the Subcommittee to study the implementation of free kindergarten education under the panel on education, and the Subcommittee on issues relating to the development of Chinese medicine under the panel on health services. It's expected that these subcommittees could start work very soon next session to consider issues of concern to the public. In considering legislative proposals, as and in our meeting with the Chief Secretary, we have repeatedly requested the administration to speed up the introduction of bills in the legislative program. While the Chief Secretary has responded to our concern, she has also reminded the relevant bureau directors to speed up their work. In this session of the LegCo, as the Deputy Chairman pointed out just now, there's been some improvement in the time frame in tabling of bills, but we've also noted in media reports that the administration has introduced 29 bills to LegCo, but actually 8 bills have been passed, less than a third. That's the lowest in terms of ratio in recent years. The media report questioned the efficiency of the work of the Council in scrutinizing bills. But I must point out that out of the 29 bills, 6 bills were only introduced in March and 17 bills were introduced in April or later. That includes the Copyright Amendment Bill 2014, the Private Columbarium Bill, and so on. And as the Deputy Chairman pointed out, there are still 2 bills to be introduced tomorrow. So, therefore, for this term, this session, or this term of the Council, there are just 2 years left. Taking this opportunity, I must stress again that the administration must introduce bills to the Council as early as possible. This will allow us adequate time to scrutinize the bills, especially those that are complex and controversial. The House Committee has also had discussions on issues in relating to the invoking of the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. There have been many more such proposals this year. We've considered 13 such proposals. 6 have been by the House committees, and 6 were considered in this legislative session, including the government's granting of the free domestic TV license, the termination of Lee Wai Ling's contract by commercial radio, delays involving the express rail link, and on the express rail link delay, members have moved a petition to set up a select committee at the council meeting on this 25th of June. Members have also repeatedly sought the support of the House Committee to move a German debate at the Legislative Council on issues of great concern to the public, including the follow-up work on the Philippine hostage case, the CFA ruling that CSSA recipients need not have fulfilled their 7 years of residency requirement, and also the attack on Mr. Kevin Lau, the chief editor of Ming Pao, and so on. And members agree that as the chairman of the House Committee, I should move a motion debate on the council meeting on the 19th of March. We have strongly condemned such a brutal act. And LegCo has also paid a visit to Shanghai under the leadership of the president in early April. This is the first time for the whole council to go on a duty visit on the mainland since 2010. It was a much welcome opportunity for members to have exchanges with central government officials on issues such as the economic development of Hong Kong, the relations between Hong Kong and the mainland, and the constitutional development, and so on. In last year's briefing session, I pointed out that there was not yet any improvement in the relations between the executive and the legislature. I've appealed to the executive to work harder to enhance communication. In this session, of course, the executive legislature relations have not seen any improvement. Rather, tension is at a breaking point. Now, of course, the executive should support the work of the council. They should consult members and enhance communication on their policy, ideas, and philosophy. So this would facilitate their governance. But then both the executive and legislature to put Hong Kong's interest first. They should set aside their differences and try to find a way to get out of the current stalemate. And hopefully there could also be mending of the rifts. A few members have repeatedly disrupted the normal conduct of business. They have abused the powers. They've paralyzed the council to achieve their end of blocking governance by the government. Now, such behavior, of course, is detrimental to the executive and legislature relations. It also doesn't help in taking forward measures in relation to people's livelihood. It would only damage public interest. So this is not what the majority of the people of Hong Kong would like to see. The Legislative Council should be a platform for rational discussion of issues of concern to the public. Members have the duty to ensure the normal operation of the council. So I think we should maintain this dignity of this council, and we should put people's interests first in working together for their good. We should avoid infighting. So taking this opportunity, I would like to thank the Secretariat and the Legal Service Division for the hard work in the past 3 years. Thank you.
I will pass you a mic. Mr. Si Wai Leung said before the EXCO meeting this morning that the filibustering of LegCo members have seriously disrupted the work of the government. He said it has got nothing to do with executive-legislative relationship. You said the relationship was tense. Is it that you do not agree with Mr. Leung? For what we saw within the current session, it was a result of many years of lack of harmonious relationship, and I haven't seen any improvement. And I'm saying that both sides have a duty to communicate and to work together for new bills and new measures, the government officials should communicate with all LegCo members and not just the pro-establishment members. They should try to communicate with the pan-democrats so as to resolve as early as possible the conflicts and disagreements so that we can work something out. And many a time the officials should also explain to the public. They shouldn't just rely on garnering sufficient number of votes here. There may be a few, three members or so who are interested in filibustering, but it would take more than 3 members to filibuster. Some other members are not really happy with the administration's performance, and therefore they may intentionally or unintentionally give a helping hand to those who filibustered. But we should all work together for the public good, for the well-being. We have 70 odd items yet to be approved by the Finance Committee. And if we cannot finish the work within this session, it would be passed on to the next session. People are concerned whether they are going to get doubled allowance payments and whether they are going to get the salary increase. And I'm not just talking about civil servants. There are public organizations whose employees are paid along the under the same system. And there are low-pay civil servants and also those working in the subvented organizations. They may need the increase in salary to pay for the expenses such as those for the new school year. Ronnie, would you like to supplement? I have also noted the remarks made by Mr. C.Y. Leung. I don't know whether he was trying to dilute the impression that his administration was not functioning well, or he actually lacked the political acumen. He has been in office for 2 years. There's no relationship to speak of between the administration, between him and the pan-democrats. As according to what I know, there was only one meeting arranged between pan-democrats and the CE. Hong Kong system is more akin to a presidential system than a parliamentary system. If you look at the U.S. system, U.S. president would from time to time not seeing eye to eye with the Congress. And in the U.S., they rely a lot on backroom politics. And I don't know the Chinese term for that. And through the backdoor negotiations, they resolve problems. But the C.Y. Leung administration may not be knowledgeable about this. They may not know how to do this. So every time, they will just try to get the support of the pro-establishment members and then give it a rush. I have to stress here that this year, for me, well, I've been a member for 10 years. This year is the one in which the administration's efficiency in tabling bills has been the lowest. Every time we met the chief secretary, well, we would remind her that the bill should not be submitted after the new year. And that is to say that if you want to get the bill passed before within the current session, the bill should not be submitted after the Lunar New Year. But if they were submitted after March or April, then there's no chance that they would get passed within the session. LegCo is not a rubber stamp. If you want us to do a meaningful job of scrutiny, you must give us sufficient time. And also, if there is disagreement of views, then and because of the lack of any effort to resolve the differences, And then you give some members the chance to filibuster. Filibuster is only effective when we are only a few meetings away from the end of sessions, because there's a so-called guillotine night, beyond which the bill will not be able to be passed, and the matter will be deferred to the next session. So tomorrow, if you see any filibustering, the members will be trying to go beyond the guillotine line. So early consultation and early negotiation with members here would make sure that no filibuster is possible.
Chairman, I know it may sound a bit repetitive, but CY Leung said this morning there are no problem between the legislature and the executive. Do you agree with what he has said? And do you think the government has taken any steps to address the problems you have faced?
I think, as I mentioned in my speech, I think the relation between the executive and the legislative branch are at the lowest point ever. I think we need to work together in a more constructive way in going forward. I think when there's a legislative proposal, I think the executive branch need to talk to the legislator, both pro-government or the pan-democrats. I think we need to reach consensus. If there's disagreement, so be it. But I think at least we need to try to work a solution for the better of the Hong Kong people. Right now, as you can see that a lot of the proposal came very late. There's no time for Legislative Council to look at. And I think the filibustering of a lot of the bill, because we never reach a consensus, or at least solve some of the part of the problem before putting it to a vote. So I think this relation need to improve. Otherwise, the whole thing will get to a standstill.
Like I said, there is no relationship that one can speak of insofar as the chief executive and the pan-democrats are concerned. And as far as I remember, we have only been invited to talk to CY Leung once over the last 2 years. And the fact that very many of the bills were handed into LegCo, some even after Easter, makes it impossible for LegCo to finish the work that we need to do in scrutinizing the bills. So I think to simply say that it is a matter of a few legislators filibustering in LegCo is either oversimplification of the problem that we face, or is due to the ignorance of the chief executive in not understanding the true value of politics in Hong Kong.
TVB.
TVB.
Change the rules and procedures regarding, in order to make it harder for legislators to filibuster. Thank you.
I think obviously the way we are conducting our business with the current rule will not work. But changing the rules and procedure of the Legislative Council is a major step. I think it required the bicameral approval. So unless we can get some consensus, between the legislator, it's very, very difficult. I think the President is already, trying to provide some solution or help the direction where we can solve some of the stalemates. But I think it will be a long process. Hopefully, after the current session and after summer break, we can all come back with a fresh mind to solve the problem together.
Anyone else, please, from Ming Pao? For this session of LegCo, there have been a number of cases of meeting being aborted. Have you reviewed it? Who should be held responsible? And about amending the rules of procedure to prevent filibustering, what sort of progress do you anticipate? Well, when a meeting is aborted, all members have to take responsibility. It's not just any one single member, because all members have to attend meetings of LegCo. But of course, in recent cases, there were one or two members who repeatedly called for quorum with the objective of aborting the meeting. And in fact, one member actually claimed that that's his objective. He wanted the meeting to be aborted. So if some members engage in such disruptive behavior, we feel rather helpless, actually. But of course, aborted meetings would not bode well for the image of LegCo. So we have to do something there. Amending the rules of procedure, that would be difficult because we need the both sectors of the members to pass the proposal. So unless members could sit down together to come up with a solution that could preserve the dignity of LegCo and ensure work can be done in LegCo, well, that's important. But as I said earlier, the executive must also help out here. They can't just approach one sector and they don't have any communication with the Pan Democrats, because if that's the case, Pan Democrats, of course, will not support changing the rules of procedure. But in any case, it's about the relationship between the executive and the legislature. And among LegCo members, we also have to come up with proposal to amend the rules of procedure so that we could get work done, because we want the people to see that we are actually serving them.
If I may, I would like to supplement. In the past 15 years, we didn't see the problems that we had in the past 2 years. So I don't think that there is any big loophole in our rules of procedure, but it's due to the very low and undesirable executive legislature relationship. In the recent 2 aborted meetings, there were sufficient numbers of members. But some members only returned at the very last second, and then the meeting was aborted. So I hope members, when there's a call for quorum, well, they may think that this is tedious and troublesome. They shouldn't go just return at the very last second, because sometimes inadvertently this would result in an aborted meeting. Or Oriental Daily. There are radical members who say this is a full-scale war being waged, and they're also going to call for quorum in panel meetings. Looking ahead, do you expect that this will become worse? But this again is a question of executive-legislature relationship. Well, radical members are now saying that they wage a full-scale war not on other members but on the executive. Although you may not be able to give them what they want, but these members also have votes. They have a few votes. So ultimately, this must be properly handled. It's not just a matter for LegCo. We have our rules of procedure. The rules of procedure are now being used to stop, to prevent the passage of bills or to prevent proper functioning of the executive. So the government must do something to ensure that the relationship is one that is normal. Well, I think after we return from the break, the situation is going to be 10 times worse than what we have seen, because we are going to face the constitutional reform. And we do not expect that something good will come out from that process. So let's wait and see. I would say that it would be much, much worse when we return. Who would like to raise questions? The House Committee Chairman said that you would like to do something in revising the rules of procedure. Are you going to introduce something like a time limit or number of amendments proposed? Well, I think one of the issues is the quorum. If you look at other legislatures, they would always insist on having a quorum when a piece of legislation is being considered. But the number of electoral members is in the basic law, is set out in the basic law. So we have to ask our legal advisor or to ask outside legal experts to advise on the way forward. We need to come up with a proposal and discuss it with all members. And this, under the bicameral voting system, we need to secure the agreement of both groups of members. There are no explicit rules or guidelines in our rules of procedure on how to deal with a call for quorum. We rely on the common law principles. Normally, in a meeting and when a decision is to be made by the legislature, we must have a quorum. But it's a matter of opinion whether, when there's a debate, we should have a quorum. But if some members think that there's a possibility that no quorum is present, they can ask for a call for quorum. But if you do this after the last one was asked, and it was just 5 minutes after that, and then the second one can be seen as an abuse of procedure. We are seeking legal advice to see if in this regard we can set some rules so that calling for quorum as a means for a filibuster can be dealt with by revising our rules of procedure. But as the chairman has rightly pointed out, any amendment only stands a chance to be passed if all parties agree. If given the poor executive-legislature relationship, if you expect all parties to be agreeable and to agree that more restrictions should be placed on filibustering, I think it's difficult. Hong Kong Daily News. It's expected that after you return from the break that the relationship would deteriorate. So what can you do to mend the relationship during the break? And according to Mr. C.Y. Leung, there's no problem, no relationship problem between the executive and the legislature. Well, will his attitude affect the room of maneuver? Are you going to propose to the administration that they should reshuffle the order of those items before the Finance Committee so that you can improve the relationship? Well, if you want to improve a relationship, it takes two sides. I have said what I've already mentioned, what can be done. The Deputy Chairman has offered his views, and I hope everyone would calm down. And then, well, if things are still messy and entangled, It's not that we don't want to deal with non-livelihood related items. We just work according to the timetable and schedule. But if there has been early communication with members, things will be easier. So what are livelihood-related issues? What about the expansion of the 3 landfills and the waste-to-energy incinerator? Are they not related to people's livelihood? The point is it's important to give sufficient time to communicate with members and also to talk to stakeholders outside the council. Otherwise, issues can be easily hijacked, and then we are in a total mess. The executive must proceed with more care. Well, when it comes to constitutional development, it's not really just up to the SAR government. But if Mr. CY Leung can improve the relationship, then the heat will not be as high, so to speak. Even today, he doesn't recognize that there's a problem with the executive-legislature relationship. So one cannot really expect that he would mend his ways and do more to improve the relationship. Therefore, I'm not optimistic about what we are going to see in the coming months.
Sorry, speaker's not coming through. Sorry, the speaker's not coming through. Well, I could only say that I would like the administration to try its very best. Now there is a severe rift. Well, let's see what they can do to mend the rift during the summer break. I think it will be a matter for the chief executive and the administration. They have to show their wisdom in resolving this. For the funding proposal on the Northeast New Territories, some members questioned the legality of the funding decision. So how would the House Committee follow up on that? Now, apart from, it's not just Leung Sing, actually, Low Wai Kwok, who chairs a PEN meeting, he was challenged by some members, the way he chaired the meeting. So panel chairman and committee chairman, the way they chair meeting, what is your comment, please? Well, each chairman may have his own style in chairing a meeting. It's not for me to comment on the style of individual chairman. Now, some questioned the decisions of the Finance Committee. Well, that's easy. If they have any questions, if they challenge the decision, they could always take out judicial review. Now, when someone chairs a meeting, of course, it always faces difficulties and challenges. We have an excellent, we are lucky, we have a team of legal advisors and secretariat staff. Now, they would have done all the support work for the chairman in advance. Well, you think that some chairmen may not have performed well, but at least adequate opportunities are given for members to speak their views, because when chairing a meeting is really about allowing members to speak their views. And so I think all have tried their best. For the less controversial issues, of course, things are straightforward, but for the more controversial issues, then the executive must do is work properly, so there will be less controversy. That's all. Okay, it's almost time. Yes, TVB?
It's on the extent to which problems faced by LegCo, low efficiency problems, are the
I'm so sorry, can you repeat that again?
Could you please elaborate on the extent to which low efficiency problems faced by LegCo are the responsibility of the chief executive?
Well, I think there are two things we must consider. First of all, the chief executive must be able to talk to legislators. And of course, when I say the chief executive, I don't just mean the chief executive, but the whole administration. There are many countries in this world where, the administration does not have a majority vote in the parliament. And very often in those countries, for example, in the United States, they resort to what we call backroom politics. And that is, they try to iron out the differences behind closed doors so as not to cause confrontation in the parliament itself. But it would appear that C.Y. Leung doesn't know how to do this, or he did not at least try to do this. This is one thing. The second thing, of course, is that in order to meet any legislative timetable, the administration must be able to table their bills in good time to enable LegCo to have time to scrutinize the bill. I think a general rule of thumb is that if you leave the bills to after Easter to give it to LegCo, there is no hope that such a bill would be passed within the legislative year. Generally, we would say that if you wish a bill to be passed, you should try to aim at tabling the bill at least latest by Chinese New Year. This year, you can see that a number of the bills were tabled in March and sometimes even in late April. There are 2 bills which would only be tabled tomorrow. So you can see the inefficiency of the administration in this year.
That's the end of the session. Thank you.